So, this is Chad Lang, and we're going to be diving right into my continued reading of Recovering Agency, Lifting the Veil of Mormon Mind Control. We are on Chapter 3, Not All Is Well in Zion. And so this has come up quite a bit. I don't want to rag on my parents too much here because they've actually gifted me some money because I'm going to school or whatever, so I don't want to insult them, but it's often come up. So you think you're so hard done by, eh? And I want to respond to that question. That's a fair question. The church is supposed to be so good. It's supposed to be this wonderful blessing in our lives. Why should we mourn or think our lot is hard? That is the section I am now on, so I hope my dad is listening at some point or watches this at some point. Why should we mourn or think our lot is hard? That is the section we are on. So I'm going to attempt to answer, why do you think you're so hard done by? And he may not think it's a good answer. Maybe no one in the church thinks it's a good answer, but this whole book is attempting to answer that very question. So, why should we mourn or think our lot is hard? No one can ignore the truth, diminish their awareness by avoiding or trivializing the facts, betray their rational mind in the process, and not pay the price psychologically. That is Blair Watson, The Psychological Effects of Mormonism. I think I could be happier if I did not believe the church is true. I think if I didn't believe the gospel, I would be off this treadmill that is making me feel almost crazy. Anonymous LDS woman quoted in Mormon Woman, Prozac, and Therapy. I want to get back to that later, actually, because what she said here is actually astounding. There are many anecdotal stories online and in books about the negative effects of Mormonism in individual lives. I will not recount them here in detail. Instead, I will give a high-level view of problems generated by high-demand group participation, and specifically in mainline Mormonism, that is the Salt Lake City Church. Most of these problems are hidden, and I underlined that. To admit that more than a few stray sheep have significant issues would be to admit failure of the gospel. Nevertheless, cults attack and destroy a person's independence, critical thinking abilities, and personal relationships, and general physical, spiritual, and psychological state of being. That is Tobias and Lalich, Captive Hearts, Captive Minds. Mormonism is no different. Jana Lalich, professor of sociology and associate editor of the Cultic Studies Journal, writes of a political cult to which she belonged. A well-respected doctor and party theoretician in his 50s said he was so tired he prayed daily for a heart attack to give him some release. A number of others said they secretly wished they would get killed in a car accident because they couldn't think of any other way of getting out. That is Jana Lalich, a little carrot and a lot of stick, a case example in Recovery from Cults, help for victims of psychological and spiritual abuse. Too many Latter-day Saints can relate. Members oppress their inner selves. Major life decisions like education, marriage, family planning, career, use of spare time, and development of talents are heavily influenced, and I underline this too, by generalized one-size-fits-all advice that doesn't account for individual preferences and situational details. In fact, the will of the group may be in direct conflict with individual interest. Minor personal decisions, including diet, fashion, use of money, entertainment, and intellectual pursuits, are given disproportionate weight and scrutiny. Members can become overly dependent on the group and engage in approval-seeking behaviors. Members are encouraged to place their locus of control outside themselves, either in God, the doctrine, the leadership, or other members, thus allowing others to define their context and frame of happiness, accomplishment, validation, and worth. Members become isolated through an overfocus on the church. Conversations outside the meeting house are monopolized by church topics. Non-member friends and family feel alienated by overuse of church terminology and lack of topic diversity. I wonder if my mother's non-Mormon family has ever felt that way. Church members are kept childlike. Yup. Blocked from exposure to a variety of ideas and people. Moreover, and I highlighted this as well, members can be plagued with unexpressed feelings of depression, guilt, shame, exhaustion, phobias, magical thinking, passive-aggressive behavior, and hidden familial abuse. They may suffer self-esteem issues or feel like they can never fit in. Others battle eating disorders, toxic perfectionism, and suicidal ideation. Self-esteem. Self-esteem reflects our deepest vision of our competence and worth. Nathaniel Brandon, The Art of Living Consciously. The degree to which Mormonism affects people's self-esteem is a function of age when they began to be indoctrinated in it, and the duration of that indoctrination process, the sensitivity of their psyche and emotions, the degree of psychological and emotional health and interdependence, enmeshment with their family of origin, and other factors. Blair Watson, The Psychological Effects of Mormonism. The church regularly tears down individual identity and replaces it with the clone of a perfect church member. This is a fundamental aspect of mind control, and it is not without cost. Self-esteem is a casualty, and I highlighted this too, because you can only esteem your authentic self, not a pseudo-self created by an outside ideology. For example, the word worthy is a loaded term used frequently in LDS culture. On the surface, it seems to mean one thing, but psychologically, it comes to mean another. Your worth or value as an individual is based on performance, and I highlighted that as well. The bishop regularly checks your purity in worthiness interviews. Other members judge your outward behaviors. Are you wearing the right clothes? Wearing garments? Following the word of wisdom? Attending church? Using clean language? Because Heavenly Father and the Holy Ghost cannot stand to be in the presence of sin, your very acceptance by God is based entirely on performance-based purity. The psychological effect for many is that the locus of control, i.e., the source of your self-worth, moves out of your hands and into the hands of others on whether or not they judge you worthwhile or worthy. Self-esteem also requires self-awareness. Continual repression of doubts and feelings that are not in line with the church teachings suppresses awareness. A personal blind spot develops to block more than just the prescribed topics. Former member Blair Watson has written and presented extensively on the effects of Mormonism on self-esteem. When confronted by faith-disrupting facts, Mormons have a choice. Either they acknowledge the facts and question and doubt what they've been taught, or they ignore or trivialize the facts that conflict with their religious faith. The psychological result of doing the latter is developing a reputation with your mind that you cannot fully trust it. If a person won't allow their mind to acknowledge and accept facts and realities that conflict with church teachings and widely held Mormon beliefs, the individual ends up experiencing a lack of confidence in their mind. Its cognitive processes, i.e., their critical and rational thinking, and the judgments and conclusions their mind produces. Religious people who do not fully trust their mind typically typically become psychologically dependent on authority figures such as parents, church leaders, etc., to tell them what is true, right, the will of God, how they should behave, etc. And that is also from Blair Watson's Psychological Effects of Mormonism. Self-esteem depends on autonomy and flexibility to make personal decisions. When an outside organization carries undue influence, your sense of confidence suffers. Watson continues, being on purpose has nothing to do with living the type of life that other people believe is right for you, or doing what a religious organization, family members, or other individuals say is the will of God for you. It is about being psychologically free enough from others' beliefs and in tune with yourself to know what your destiny is and to live it. That is also Watson, The Psychological Effects of Mormonism. These factors have a powerful effect on those who fit easily into the church's mold. Others who don't fit so well are impacted even further. And so now I want to get into this concept called square peg, round hole syndrome. Sadly, members are taught to believe that Mormonism is right for every single human on the planet, that the church is perfectly compatible with every person who has all the good traits of human nature. If a person has trouble fitting in, therefore, there is something seriously wrong with that person, and that is Jack B. Worthy, the Mormon cult. Some of the same beliefs and practices that are more good than bad for some LDS individuals or more bad than good for others. That is Kent Ponder, PhD, Mormon woman, Prozac, and therapy. Particularly vulnerable to self-esteem issues are those who struggle to fit in, and I underline that as well, because it applies to me. Many in the ex-Mormon forums have said they felt like a square peg trying to fit into a round hole. I had used this analogy myself for many years before I finally left. The church is a better fit for some than others, but it claims to be the straight and narrow gate to happiness and salvation for every human being. Kent Ponder, in his essay on the high rates of Prozac use among LDS women, uses a shoe analogy. If a church's belief shoes are all narrow, even though they vary in length, which women will think this works? Those with narrow feet, of course, they will benefit. Those with wide feet will be in pain and wondering why. When bishoprics and therapists have strong religious conviction that narrow shoes are God's only true shoes, they offer corn and bunion pads to pained women with wide feet. And that's Kent Ponder, PhD, Mormon women, Prozac, and therapy. Ponder admits that many members gain a sense of security by strict adherence to rules and pre-made decisions. Indeed, the strong, loyal community resulting from such a totalistic environment, that word's going to come up quite a bit, has its advantages, especially to those who can walk the walk in the one-size-fits-all shoes. Yet, according to a former member writing as Jack B. Worthy, that's quite the pen name, the Mormon community can be a source of serious misery for those with traits or personalities that clash with its clearly defined norms of acceptable behavior and its endless list of expectations. I highlighted all this too. Particularly vulnerable are the socially awkward, gay or transgender, exceedingly curious or scientifically minded, neurodiverse individuals with bipolar disorder, autism, and Asperger's syndrome, and anxiety disorders, eccentrics, certain types of artists and creative people, free thinkers and intellectuals, nonconformists and free spirits, Single parents, divorced people, feminists, liberals, those who are uncomfortable with restrictive gender roles, converts, people from diverse racial and ethnic backgrounds, and unorthodox thinkers. That's quite a list. This list is not exhaustive. Many people in these categories find ways to be happy in the church, but for some, their struggles outweigh the benefits of membership and they become inactive or leave. The church tells us it is a choice to be straight, obedient, submissive, faithful, conservative, healthy, and good mothers or fathers. The sad part is the extent to which square pegs tend to blame themselves and can never be happy just being who they are, because the round hole is the established as the ideal. Gay people are also misfits in Mormon culture. If a person is gay, this fact absolutely must be kept secret. Gay Mormons learn to hate themselves. Few are accepted by their families for who they are. That is Jack B. Worthy, the Mormon cult. The church seems to be slowly changing its stance on homosexuality, but it is not changing quickly enough or in the right ways. You can get excommunicated for saying that. In some cases, members still participate in institutionally approved bullying, as gay members are shunned and mistreated by wards and families. Evergreen International is a church-supported organization which still attempts to cure people from same-sex attraction. That is the ssavoice.com, Evergreen International, accessed November 8th, 2013, and there's a website code. Okay. Evergreen. North Star is another organization for homosexual Mormons. They advocate that homosexuals should enter a straight marriage with someone they do not love and are not attracted to. This is self-denial in its most painful form. The message is, if you can't become who the church wants you to be, then at least pretend. The church promises happiness and salvation through marriage and family, and to deny it is to those born with same-sex attraction, or to work around it by making people marry someone they cannot feel close to, is highly problematic. In contrast to these organizations, Affirmation seeks to reconcile LDS faith with being true to your gender identity and sexual orientation. That is Affirmation Gay and Lesbian Mormons, affirmation.org. Okay. Creative souls, I highlighted this as well, may also be square pegs, like he who has a strong need to express himself or herself in unique and artistic ways. The repetitive lifestyle of Mormonism that demands conformity of dress and behavior and major time commitments to church activities feels boring and bland to the artists and nonconformists. And that is also Jack B. Worthy. While Mormonism encourages creative outlets, talents must be developed within a certain rigid structure. Music and other performance arts are highly encouraged, but usually channels towards uplifting styles like hymns and classical music. Rock music, for example, is discouraged. So I want to talk about something I noticed that was really weird to me in church culture. Okay, so I am a heavy metal fan. I'm a headbanger. Okay, and I have been to a lot of rock concerts, among other things. And it's weird to me when I see these beautiful women with lovely voices get up on the pulpit and they sing a piece, and then everyone just sits there and enjoys it quietly. No one says a thing, because you're supposed to be reverent, and then she goes and quietly sits down. While I'm used to going to shows where you're encouraged to make a lot of noise, hoot and holler, and raise a ruckus. And I just found that to be very strange. You know, it's the total opposite. Is she is not given any attention for her talents. We're just kind of, oh, that was nice, but we're going to keep silent about it. And then she goes and sits down. Thought that was weird. Okay, according to John D. Goldhammer, groups encourage what I call creativity in a box, which means we can be creative as long as it furthers the group's agenda and purpose. Edgy expression of art are highly frowned upon. Everything is expected to be a G-rated, faith-promoting, and all sweetness and light. It is difficult to say anything artistically new when confined by both spoken and unspoken expectations. If you feel like a round peg in the church's round hole, then more power to you, but don't take away power from others. Virtually every individual knows that it is irrelevant to wonder whether his or her native language is true. Neither do they look for the true car or think they have found it. They look for a brand and a model that suits their needs. And that's ponder Mormon, women, Prozac, and therapy. The church is in a position to be the brand that meets everyone's needs. In order to do so, they would have to become less focused on a narrow ideal of perfection. Guilt and shame. Totalistic systems establish a demand for purity, making it impossible to feel completely adequate. The result is a deep sense of guilt and shame, which can have lasting effects. Members blame themselves for bad things that happen, fall into depression and self-loathing, and churn with anxiety for not measuring up. Avoidance of shame can lead to denial of authenticity. The true inner personality, when in conflict with doctrine, is tied up and stuffed into a well where its screams can't be heard. Sexual shame and ignorance can prevent a healthy, responsible sex life. And ironically, shame can lead